The Enchanting Tale of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Hello, dreamers! Welcome back to Dandelion Daydreams. Today, we're going on another magical adventure with one of the most beloved fairy tales of all time, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So, get comfy and let's dive into this enchanting tale. Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there lived a princess named Snow White. She was kind and gentle, with a heart full of love for all living things. Her skin was as white as snow, her lips as red as a rose, and her hair as black as ebony. But despite her beauty and kindness, Snow White's life was not easy. Her stepmother, the queen, was a woman filled with jealousy and cruelty. The queen owned a magical mirror, and every day she would stand before it and ask, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror, bound to always speak the truth, would reply, "You, my queen, are the fairest of them all." Hearing this pleased the queen and fed her vanity. But one fateful day, the mirror gave a different answer. It said, "Snow White is the fairest of them all." The queen's eyes darkened with rage. "Snow White?" she repeated. "How dare she take my place?" Consumed by envy, the queen decided Snow White must be eliminated. She summoned her huntsman, a loyal servant, and commanded him to take Snow White deep into the forest and, well, to ensure she never returned. The huntsman, though loyal, had a kind heart. He took Snow White to the forest, but when the moment came, he couldn't bring himself to harm her. Tears filled his eyes as he said, "Run, princess. Run and never return to the castle. The queen must never find you." Terrified and alone, Snow White ran as fast as her feet could carry her. The forest was dark and seemed alive with mysterious sounds. Branches creaked, owls hooted, and shadows danced around her. Just as she thought she could run no more, she saw a soft glow of light in the distance. Following it, she came upon a little cottage nestled among the trees. Snow White peered inside and saw a cozy but very messy little home. It looked as though children lived there: tiny chairs, a small table, and 7 little beds all in a row. Exhausted from her journey, Snow White tidied up the cottage, hoping to repay whoever lived there for letting her rest. Then she curled up on 3 of the little beds and drifted into a deep sleep. When night fell, the owners of the cottage returned. They weren't children at all, but 7 dwarfs who worked in the nearby mines. Their names were Doc, Grumpy, Happy, Sleepy, Bashful, Sneezy, and Dopey. As they entered, they noticed the tidy room and whispered among themselves, "Who's been here?" Doc, the leader, pointed to Snow White. "Look, there's someone sleeping in our beds." Snow White woke with a start and gasped at the sight of the dwarfs, but they smiled warmly, and soon she felt safe enough to tell them her story. "Please," she said, "let me stay here. I'll cook and clean and keep your home in order." The dwarfs were touched by her kindness and agreed to let her stay. For a while, Snow White lived happily in the cottage. She sang as she cooked and danced with the dwarfs. Her laughter filled the forest, and even the animals came to visit her. But back at the castle, the evil queen was far from happy. One day, she asked her magic mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" To her horror, the mirror replied, "Snow White, who lives with the 7 dwarfs, is the fairest of them all." The queen's face twisted with fury. "Still alive?" she hissed. "I'll deal with her myself." The queen used dark magic to disguise herself as an old peddler woman. She brewed a potion and dipped a shiny red apple into it. "One bite of this, and she'll fall into a sleep so deep no one can wake her," she cackled. The next day, the queen set out for the dwarf's cottage. Snow White, tending to the garden, saw the old woman and greeted her kindly. "Would you like to try this beautiful apple, my dear?" the queen asked. Snow White hesitated, but the queen insisted, "Just one bite. It's the sweetest apple you'll ever taste." As Snow White took a bite, her eyes widened in shock. The apple fell from her hand, and she collapsed to the ground. The queen laughed wickedly and disappeared into the forest. When the dwarfs returned home, they found Snow White lying still and lifeless. Grief-stricken, they placed her in a glass coffin, unable to bear burying her. They kept watch over her day and night, their hearts heavy with sadness. Word of snow. White's beauty spread across the land, and one day, a prince who had heard of the sleeping maiden came to see her. As he looked upon her, he felt a deep love in his heart. Gently, he knelt and kissed her hand. Suddenly, Snow White's eyes fluttered open. The spell was broken. The dwarfs cheered with joy as Snow White and the prince embraced. The prince asked her to marry him, and she said yes. Together, they returned to his kingdom, where they were married in a grand celebration. And as for the wicked queen? When she asked her mirror again, it shattered into 1,000 pieces, and she was never seen again. Snow White and her prince lived happily ever after, and the 7 dwarfs visited them often, bringing laughter and joy to their castle. And that's the magical tale of Snow White and the 7 dwarfs, a story of friendship, love, and the triumph of good over evil. If you enjoyed this fairy tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more enchanting stories from Dandelion Daydreams. Keep dreaming, dreamers, and we'll see you in the next adventure.